it was a very bad night for the Conservatives, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, even if you include Uxbridge, where the Conservative vote was down by only 7 points, on average across the three by-elections, the Conservative vote was down by 21 points as compared with 2019. That's actually slightly bigger than the 18-point drop currently being registered by the opinion polls. And, I'm not sure that the Conservatives' prospects look any worse now than they did 24 hours ago, but equally, they don't look any better either. And 24 hours ago, the Conservatives' prospects looked not very bright so far as the next general election is concerned.
Isn't it truth, Sir John, that obviously Greg Hands, the Conservative chairman, has been touring the TV and radio studios this morning, obviously entirely understandably, pointing to Uxbridge and saying this is a really significant result and so on. But the truth is what happened is that what the Conservatives very successfully managed to do was actually do the thing which by-elections are often supposed to be, or parties tell us they ought to be, but rarely are, and actually make it a genuinely local contest about a genuinely local issue, whereas the other two obviously seem to be more national in their orientation.
Well, that is the testament, at least, of the Conservative victor in Uxbridge. In his speech after being declared the victor, he focused entirely on his campaign against the extension of the ULA scheme to the outer London boroughs. There was no mention of Mr Sunak's 5 tests, no attempt to argue that he thought the by-election demonstrated that the Conservatives were turning the corner. Maybe he forgot the script that Central Office had sent him, but it does therefore make it rather more difficult for Greg Hands or Conservatives in general to argue that there is a wider portent to this. Now, that said, it does raise questions for Labour. Why wasn't the party able to deal effectively with an attack on the policies of its Labour London mayor? Had nobody thought about the fact that this might be a difficulty in this particular constituency and how it should be dealt with? Does it raise questions about how solid is the support that Labour enjoys? Now, it may indeed in Selby, where there weren't any local difficulties, recorded a near record-breaking swing away from the Conservatives. But apparently, when hitting a bit of rough water, that safety-first strategy that Sir Keir Starmer seems to be keen on doesn't seem to have perhaps weathered terribly well, or at least it's not clear that it's ensured that Labour have gathered onto it a group of people whose commitment to the party is sufficiently strong that they will withstand such a campaign. Now, the answers to those questions, I suspect, will be much debated inside the Labour Party, but there are questions to be asked. We know that Sir Keir Starmer is nothing like as popular as Tony Blair before Tony Blair became leader, and arguably also, Labour before 1997. Yes, they might have chased the centre, but they still managed to generate a sense of excitement about the prospect of a Labour government. That is something that Labour are finding more difficult to do, in part perhaps because it is indeed generally more difficult to do, because whereas, frankly, although New Labour weren't willing to acknowledge it, they were looking forward to the prospect of a relatively benign fiscal situation, and one indeed where eventually they increased public expenditure quite substantially. The fiscal outlook for after the next general election looks much more difficult, and that perhaps is also part of the reason why we've seen Labour beginning to rein back in some of its spending promises, because he's not sure the money is going to be there to fund them, as well as perhaps also being convenient so far as Sir Keir Starmer's safety first strategy is concerned.
And
Grace could finally go on her dream trip using her points, but she never dreamed she'd meet Hero there. You were made to surprise yourself. We were made to award you points for your next trip.
For just $67, you can make as many videos as you want, and you never need to pick up a camera or use any fancy editing software. With Doodly, you drag, you drop, you tweak some settings, and boom, video done. It'll take you just a few minutes. So, let's hear from the Doodly creator, Brad. to see why Doodly is so easy to use and why you should grab this offer right now.
Hi, I'm Brad Callen, and in this video, I'm going to show you how anyone can quickly and easily create doodle videos, just like the one you're watching right now, using Doodly. Alright, here I am inside the Doodly software, which is available for Mac and PC. You'll notice that you can choose the style of your video, selecting from whiteboard, blackboard, greenboard, glassboard, and for more advanced users, you can even use a green screen background, giving you lots of control over the video style. In this example, let's create a nice looking whiteboard doodle video. You'll notice that Doodly makes it super easy to create your own doodle videos with done-for-you scenes, hundreds of characters, a huge selection of props and images, royalty-free music, and even text. And for the ultimate in customization, you can even upload your own images, fonts, props, and music. Now to create a doodle video, it's really simple. First, I'll add a headline to get people's attention, then center it before adding a character. I like this one. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and add a prop too. I'll resize everything and voila, we have Steve reading a book on his chair. Not only is creating a doodle video that simple, but we also have a bunch of really cool settings available too. Doodly allows you to customize your video with real hands, cartoon hands, or none at all, seeing transitions with even camera panning. As you can see, doodle videos do an incredible job of educating, entertaining, and selling, making them one of the best investments you can make in your business. And that's especially true right now. The going rate for professional doodle video creation is anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 to have someone make a video similar to the one that I just showed you. But with Doodly, anyone can create a doodle video regardless of tech skills and experience. If you were to visit the doodly.com homepage right now, you'd see the regular price for Doodly is an ongoing monthly payment, which adds up to $468 per year. But since you've landed on this promotion page, you can get your copy of Doodly right now for a one-time $67 payment. No monthly fees forever. And you'll even have access to all the free feature updates we offer our Doodly users, which is typically once every week. So to lock in this one-time $67 payment with zero monthly fees forever, go ahead and click or tap on the button next to this video to claim your copy of Doodly today. And we look forward to welcoming you to the Doodly family.
And we shouldn't, Sir John, should we forget or overlook that, again, repeated remarkable Lib Dem success. It's like easy to do now because we've got rather accustomed to it. This is their fourth massive by-election win in this parliament, overturning a huge Tory majority, replacing it with a huge Lib Dem majority, 29-point swing. Again, remarkable. We saw it in North Shropshire, we saw it in Chesham and Amersham, we saw it in Tiverton, and it really confirms, doesn't it, that they are back as a formidable presence, certainly at least in the by-election sphere.
Yeah, certainly in the by-election sphere. I mean, of the five biggest swings from Conservative to Liberal Democrat in by-election history, three of them have occurred in this parliament. And insofar as the Liberal Democrats' principal strategy is to try to focus on those seats where they're going to start off second to the Conservatives in the hope that they might be able to increase their parliamentary representation through success in them. These by-election successes are promising, although we should remember it's going to be much more difficult for the Democrats to focus their resources even on, let's say, 30 constituencies which they might target, as opposed to pretty much piling everything into one constituency and ignoring the other two by-elections that were going on. But still, promising. But the thing that's clearly missing from all of this is that, when the Liberal Democrats last got four by-election victories in a row in the 92-97 Parliament, that was also accompanied by a significant increase in the party's standing in the overall national polls. But despite the fact that we are in the midst of a deeply unpopular Conservative government, and that normally when the Conservatives are in trouble in midterm, the Liberal Democrats profit at least as much as Labour in the national polls. Of that, there is no sign so far. And even these by-election victories haven't been followed up by much in the way of a boost to the party in the polls. And yes, Liberal Democrat MPs will say that's not our principal focus, but in the longer run, if the party is going to get back to the kind of position it was before the debacle of 2015, then it's got to be more than just about profiting from Conservative difficulties at a difficult time in particular constituencies. It will need to be a wider strategy than that.
It's extraordinary, that, isn't it, Sir John, the lack of translation to the national opinion polls. But I suppose...
You could say traders are like music conductors, orchestrating an ensemble of instruments, overseeing every movement, major or minor, staying on tempo with impeccable precision. Greatness requires great tools. It's your show, Etoro Trading. Encore.
I suppose the other way of looking at it is that we now can see we've had plenty of by-election evidence for this, and indeed to some extent in local elections as well. What we are seeing, perhaps we didn't see quite as much in Uxbridge, but what we are seeing is highly efficient transfers of the non-Conservative vote in constituency after constituency to whichever force is best able to defeat the Conservatives. And that has got to, I mean, people often talk about tactical voting and it's a kind of dawn which doesn't always come. But in a sense, that is similar to the 92 to 97 period.
It's similar to 1997 Parliament. It's been evidence for the last 2 years, basically ever since the Conservatives first became unpopular in the wake of the initial Partygate accusations. And yes, in Somerton, the Labour Party went from 13% to 2 to 3%. Their vote collapsed. The Liberal Democrats didn't have much to defend, but they fell back in both Selby and in Uxbridge. Now, of course, what's been going on in the by-elections in the last 2 years, there's been a tacit agreement between the parties as to where they're going to focus their efforts. Labour, they've not been third in this part of Somerset since 1970. They weren't going to waste their effort on fighting that by-election hard. Liberal Democrats equally, no chance in Selby or Uxbridge. So they're being rational about how they focus their resources, and they'll do the same thing in a general election. But so that to that extent, I think the voters are not necessarily getting a positive message to say, you need to vote for this party to defeat the Conservatives. They're getting the message by default. No campaign. Why bother to vote for them?
Finally, Sir John, you're not a betting man, I know. But I mean, as you say, maybe maybe the narrative, maybe the analysis, the frame of analysis isn't so different tonight as it was, or today as it was before these results came in overnight. But even if, I mean, the Labour Party's got a huge mountain to climb just to get a majority of one, but you'd have to say on the basis of these results on the polling that is more likely than not. And certainly if not, it's very hard to see the Conservatives being the largest party at the next election, isn't it? And if that's the case, they have no coalition partners. So in some form, it is overwhelmingly likely we're heading to some sort of Labour administration.
It's even tougher for the Conservatives than that. Labour don't even need to be the largest party to form administration, because the Conservatives don't have any other minority parties who are likely to help them to sustain such a minority administration, whereas the Liberal Democrats and the SNP will facilitate a Labour minority administration. Yeah, the mountain the Conservatives have to climb to get to the point of around 320 seats when they might be able to form a government, it's a very, very formidable one. Labour are not guaranteed to get an overall majority. They weren't guaranteed 24 hours ago. They're not guaranteed now, but they still have a prospect of getting one. Until the Liz Truss debacle, there was no obvious prospect that at all. But Labour still need to seal the deal with the electorate to ensure they do indeed do well enough to get the overall majority, as opposed to finding themselves in what could be a very difficult situation of trying to run a minority administration at a time when the fiscal finances are still difficult, the public services are not working terribly well, and taxation is relatively high.
Professor